Well, good evening and welcome to the Arbor Hills Nature Preserve in Plano, Texas, where it's a nice, comfy 104 degrees here towards the end of August in Texas. Officially the hottest review I have ever filmed. Tonight's exercise is a field test of the Brinyte PT16 Flashlight. The manufacturer contacted me, wondered if I would do a field test if they sent me a light, and well, here we are. I should point out that the light can be ordered in multiple packages. The standard that you see here, there is an upgraded package, I believe they call it outdoor, that comes with a tack ring and a holster. Then I believe it's the tactical package that comes with a mount and remote pressure switch, which allows you to use this as a WML. From my initial testing, I noticed that this flashlight feels very light. Very good balance fit in the hand. I have average sized hands that should give you a point of reference. Very aggressive strike bezel. I appreciate the aggressive texturing here, although in this heat my hands are going to get so sweaty that it's almost impossible to come up with any texturing that would be sufficient. I may even have to transition to gloves later for that reason. We'll just have to see. Tail cap switches, anti-roll for us old timers who like the overhand grip. This also gives us the ability to hold the light like this low, like we normally would use an underhand, but we can still use the tail cap switches and then transition very quickly back to overhand grip. So some of us will get a dual benefit from that. You have a side switch, which can be found very conveniently simply by moving your thumb in this direction till you feel that raised area. That's easy to do even with gloves. You're right on top of it. Or you can use the one-way clip as a guide. Nice and flush below the level of the head area of the light. So if you put it on something flat, much harder to get an accidental activation. Charging port cover here. This really wants to come up easily. So even if you've got it pressed down good and hard, it still wants to flip back up. Keep that in mind. The UI works as documented. In terms of UI and operation, I only have a couple observations that may be relevant to you. You do have some protection here from accidental activation, but only in one direction. Less so there. If you're concerned about that, you can manually lock that out, and if you do so, the side switch will continue to work. You can electronically lock out the side switch, and this is the thing that you really need to think about. There's also a 1-minute auto lockout. So if you are a fan of an underhand grip and you have not used the light for 1 minute, it automatically goes into lockout. When you first get the light, the chances are you'll forget that. You'll single click, nothing will happen. Then you have to triple click to unlock. That gives you a double flash, and then you can either quick press or long press, depending on whether you want the light to come on at the output level it was before, or you want it to come on low. If it's off for less than 1 minute, you thought it was longer and you triple click, well, that triple click puts it into lockout. Or you can turn the light on when the tail cap switch for, I believe it's 5 seconds, and then that will unlock the side. So as I often tell people, these are just things that you want to keep in mind before you click that add to cart button. In terms of output, lumen output, 2000 peak, however, over 92,000 peak candela. This is a thrower, and I will be evaluating it and field testing it tonight in terms of longer throw style applications. But enough of that. I'm tired of talking. You are probably tired of listening to me. What you're really interested in is how does this light perform under realistic conditions and circumstances. Well, I'll let the light go down in the preserve, and once it gets dark, we'll get out there and find out. I wanted to film this as a separate chapter so that if you're not interested in strobe, YouTube makes it very easy to just move on to the next chapter. One thing I'll point out about this direct to strobe switch is that it's very generous. If I was using gloves, that would be greatly appreciated. But notice it's got a lot of play. So it's generally the case that if you're not using the light and you like that overhand grip, then you're likely to have your thumb in roughly this position. Because of that play, you'll probably have better results. You can accidentally roll that switch while you're pressing down and blow the strobe. Instead, you'll get better results by using this section of your thumb and just roll down and straight in like that. And even if you come in from a top or bottom angle, you're going to get that strobe every time. Whereas there was a case where I tried to do it with the tip of my thumb, but I was coming down and I rolled it too far back before pressing down. So just a little hint, if you do get the light in turn and you do want to use strobe as a defensive response, which means you're going to be acting under duress, something else to think about. Hope you find that little tip helpful. There is still just a bit of sunlight out on the horizon, but I'm going to go ahead and start early. I like to test in a variety of circumstances. Out here in the playground in medium output, I'm just trying to get an idea in the 35, 40 plus yard range. What kind of visibility do we have in tree lines? For this lumen output, actually very good. And you can see really cutting through that lighting at the picnic area. I can see well behind that tree. Reflections are very manageable up close. And then as we look into the entrance to the Dorba Trails, which is the Dallas Off-Road Biking Association, this is exactly what I would expect from a high candela light such as this. Really good first test. So I've been using the low output level to just make my way along the concrete path. And what really interests me is that for this low lumen output, some people might think this is just a couple, 3 steps removed from moonlight, the downrange that I can get. I could actually do minimal detection across the bridge, which I'm guesstimating is a good 40, 50 yards from my current position. Let's walk down here, see how it does in a more practical example. I've got to really watch out for Marvin moccasin and Carl copperhead this time of year, since the creek is right down there. And I'll have to apologize for the filming because I'm watching where I'm going. I'm not watching the camera. And look at that. I can see from here literally to the other side of the creek. Impressive. This is the second low test. Could I use this to follow a groomed path? It's right on the edge as to whether I would use this or not. Remember that grip I showed you? I'm using that to hold the light low, yet still have access to the tail cap controls. And I can get terrain information. I can see that this slopes right to left. I can see where the rain wash has cut grooves in the path. Those are areas that I'd trip over if I didn't have good downrange visibility. I can see a little bit right to left, but it's not the greatest. But absolute minimal, this would just barely work. Second test in medium. From right here, I'm well over 35, probably pushing 38 to the opposite edge of the creek. You can't see the creek here. Sign marking the entrance to the outer loop trail. If you've seen any other videos, we're probably looking at a good 23, 24 to the sign. Then distances increase as we go out across this tree line. Can really get good visibility inside the tree line. Then it gets closer and further away as the path curves off to the right. And here we are in high, looking across two sets of tree lines. I can already see well behind that second line of trees. And as we sweep out to the left, I get to that tree and keep going till I lose line of sight. It's well over 100 yards. And I can see inside that tree line all the way to where I have line of sight. And everyone's favorite turbo. There was some heat buildup from the high test. I let that cool down. The tree that I'm lighting up in the distance is over 175 yards from this position, and I can actually get good detail even at this distance. So I believe that it's possible on a clearer night. You can see the particulates in the air. It was hazy earlier today, and we have light pollution from the surrounding city. And I feel confident that this light in turbo could give you useful light for making identifications out to the limit of however you can make identifications with the unaided eye. Now there is some pretty significant heat buildup. I'm using an overhand grip. My pinky finger is pretty close to that side switch, and I'm really feeling it, very significant heat on the bottom of my hand. I'm going to let this run 2 to 3 minutes. If I recall from the user's guide, there's a step down at 2 minutes and then 130 minutes of runtime after that. The heat is getting to the point that I'm almost ready to shift the position of my hand. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. I've shifted the palm of my hand away, and I'm holding the light now as far as I can comfortably towards the tail end of the light. Now the good news is that once the sun went down, oh, there you can really see the step down. Once the sun went down, it started cooling off rapidly, and you may see from the trees, we picked up a substantial breeze. That's at least helping me and it may be helping the light out as well. Of course, it does mean more wind noise that has to be removed in post. I'm going to let this go at least another 30 seconds and just try to get some visual verification that we are in a steady state. It certainly seems that way to me. And I'm shifting my hand back to where it was. The heat is not as bad. And there we are, over 3 minutes sustained in turbo. I'm going to take a break, let the light cool down, and then we'll run some more tests. I have some light behind me and above me from the observation tower. I'm about 10, not quite 11 yards away from the light. It's in medium, and I'm standing it on the strike bezel on the concrete bridge that extends across the walkway to the observation tower. So if you just want some very, very low, ultra close proximity light, that's one way to get it. That's my headlamp. That'll give you a better idea of what we're looking at. I have my search and rescue headlamp set in 400 lumen flood. That's comparable to the max output of a number of popular hiking headlamps that you can get in a sporting goods store. And I have moderate visibility out to about 20-25 yards, but making identifications beyond that is difficult. I've got the PT16 pre-staged in high, and this is actually a great role for this particular light, and that is if you like to do night hiking and exploration, it's a very good complement to a typical hiking headlamp. And you see in high mode here, even with my headlamp on, even with the light pollution from the surrounding visibility, superb downrange, and you're going to get a ton of runtime out of this high mode relative to a typical night excursion. This is an area I normally do a lot of wrap-ups in medium. I'm actually surprised I'm doing this in medium. Maximum line of sight well over 55 yards. Even so, I suppose if I were to make any changes, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I wouldn't mind seeing a moonlight in the 3 to 5 lumen range and then bump both the low and medium output levels up. I'll pan around here a bit. You do have a fairly useful spill. Not great, but still somewhat useful. It would be more useful if you would bump the low and medium up. It's great in high turbo. And I guess that brings us to the end of our exercise tonight. I say this a lot, but it always bears repeating. My field tests are all about performance. You can go to the manufacturer's website, maybe read 1 or 2 other reviews, get a lot of technical info. You can read up on the UI, make sure there aren't any gotchas from your personal perspective in terms of how you intend to carry, deploy, and use the light. You can look at the price, and once you get past all of that, it really comes down to performance. That's why I don't make recommendations. I don't try to push brands or models or anything like that. As I've said so many times before, I'm just the guy who gets out and runs the test. You have to make the decision. I hope you saw enough tonight to make that decision one way or the other. If you would like to see something else, leave a comment. I'll put it on my ever-growing to-do list. And on that happy note, we're going to call it a night. And as always, until the next review, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching the video.